happening. Hopefully we get a Season 2, and we'll see whether or not that occurs. But QXC, going into this matchup, how confident are you feeling?
Fine. My TVP is good right now. I think I've been playing better than I've been playing in a long time, especially the last couple of days. And yeah, I have a lot of replays and a lot of history about State. I know how he plays. I've seen him choke against Drunken Boy yesterday, which was a hilarious way to lose.
Ooh.
And I'm really not concerned.
State, so you choked against Drunken Boy. How are you going to avoid repeating that performance?
I was nervous against Drunken Boy because he's a good Terran, but I think I can take you.
All right. Guys, any final words for your opponent before you go into this? QXC?
2-0.
State?
Good luck. Good luck.
All right. Okay, guys. Thank you very much for your time. Assume the position, and let's get ready to rock and roll. All right, Frodan. So, pretty confident words coming out from both guys. State, not really a player that is too used to competing in this kind of environment.
Yeah, it's really funny to see QXC talk so confidently, because I did watch that game that Drunken Boy just, like, he should not have won that game, but State threw like a 100 army supply in exchange for maybe 20 Marines, and State completely lost that game. State ended up winning the series though, so I hope QXC doesn't get too overconfident. And State's been playing pretty solid. It's not like he was doing any two base all-ins or Hello Kitty style shenanigans. So QXC has a lot on his on his plate. And I really think that it's going to be a good matchup, man. I'm really excited to see this Fighting Wars Totalbiscuit.
Yeah, it's always nice to see. These guys, probably the most polite. Group C, we had that trash talk. Suppy and Hello Kitty were trash talking each other in languages I couldn't even understand. It was getting that ridiculous. But in this case, you know, State doesn't have a huge amount of experience in front of the camera, and QXC's generally a pretty nice guy. Like, it's pretty hard to goad really nasty things out of QXC.
Yeah, unless you meet him on ladder and you cheese him. And then his keyboard suffers the worst of it. I also really think that State, I really want to see more variety in his play too, just because yesterday, just like QXC was saying, he knows State's style. And QXC is he's a really intellectual player as well. He really dissects builds. Once upon a time, QXC wanted to hire interns for himself to break down opponents' builds and analyze them. This is how deep QXC goes. He goes deeper than Inception when it comes to thinking about StarCraft 2 builds.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's something that we've seen from him, I think as a result of him just being so driven to be the absolute best, and he currently isn't. I mean, there's no question about that, but we are talking about the guy that all-killed IM in GSTL, pretty much the only foreigner to ever have that level of success in the Team League. And it seems like his style of preparation, as well as his style of play, is very intellectual.
For sure, and I think that's going to come into play. You know, QXC is saying his TVP has gotten a lot better, and I think Terrans do have a little bit of an edge against Protoss players, and I expect QXC to be aggressive. He's also a very naturally aggressive Terran player, loves dropping, loves multitasking, so I think State's going to have to be very wary early on, but I want to see the opening build orders before we make any further predictions.
Yeah, no real question about that. We're currently in the second lobby right now for Game Hearts, which of course will allow our players to pick their colors as well as pick their teams, which is always nice to see. We actually have 3 teamless players in this division, which is very unusual.
That's right. State used to be on Quantic, but after their disbandment and recollection, State has kind of been teamless. I hope not too long, though, because only, I think, select few individuals who are really motivated as well as financially secure can actually go teamless if they want to remain full-time. I think State's a great talent, and I think he's ready to prove it. And if he advances today and does well in SHOUTcraft, all the more reason for a team to really pick this guy up.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely agree with that. It's, you know, I'm just really interested to see how these teamless players actually perform against like a real American powerhouse like QXC, and I think that's going to be extremely entertaining to see. We've got quite the selection of players. All right, we are about ready to get started, and it's going to be fun, man. It's going to be Neoplanet S. It is going to get messy. Okay, we're getting into the game right now, and I'm intrigued to see what happens. We also let the guys know, by the way, that Ally Chat can be seen by the viewers. That's a feature of GameHeart, something rather unusual. We did have Suppy use that previously to actually commentate directly to the viewers what he thought Hello Kitty was doing, which ended up being hilarious when he was completely wrong.
Yeah, I remember seeing a little bit of that.
That was pretty damn fun. All right, here we are, ladies and gentlemen, on Neoplanet S. Our first contestant of the day in the Red Trunks playing Protoss to the northeast. His name is...
State!
yeah, that's pretty much it. He's State. There's nothing else to really say about that. Thank you very much, Clutch, for the announcement there. Versus his opponent, a veritable titan. Bandana Man, as the Korean fans called him after his all-kill of LGIM in the GSCL many, many moons ago. He is in the Blue Trunks playing town in the Southwest. He goes by the name of...
Complexity QXC.
So Neoplanet S is a really good starting map just because almost anything is viable. Opening Stargate is really good. Proxy Stargates is really good for State if you want to do that. Of course, State is more of a 3-gate Robos type of player after he expands. Drops from QXC can be really good, as well as just straight up macro play. You can even fake out your opponent, pretend to be going gas, and then just end up making a reactor and playing straight up from there. Reapers are okay, Totalbiscuit, but at the same time, Reapers are never bad in this matchup, I feel.
No, I don't think so. And the interesting thing that we're seeing here is that QXC is most likely going to go CC first, and that means, of course, that Reaper is probably not going to come into play unless he decides to go for a mid-game. And to be fair, like, I've seen mid-game Reaper actually used to good effect for scouting purposes, because generally speaking, when your opponent... there's that stage of the game where your opponent moves down to the natural to directly defend it against any kind of early pressure, leaving the main open for a Reaper scout, which, in my opinion, there are times when it's actually better for you than using a scan.
Oh yeah, just because you can get full corner-to-corner information if Protoss isn't careful. You can even pick off a probe if he's not completely paying attention. And the nice thing is, you can even still open up Reapers following a command center first if you really want to. Nonetheless, QXC still has to be a little bit cautious because command center on the low ground still is kind of bodacious, considering a lot of Protosses like going early Zealot Stalker pressure nowadays.
That's very, very true, but this seems to be the result of analyzing the pressure, isn't it? Actually, the Zealot is coming out here from State, interestingly enough. It looked like he was going to skip it, but he's not. He also took pretty early double gas here, I feel. Now, this could be for a couple of different things, but knowing State's style, what would you expect from him?
I mean, he's taking double gas to really mind game his opponent if he's scouted, as well as gives him options. I don't really think State's going to do anything too crazy other than 1-gate expand. It just seems his style to be able to go double gas. And it gives you a lot of flexibility, because if you see Terran cheesing, then all of a sudden you wouldn't be pressed for gas or for tech. And I think in this scenario, State's just going to play macro.
Yeah, that seems to make sense. We've gone with, this is the gasless method of the early expand here from QXC. The CC first on the low ground without gas is usually followed by double barracks. That allows you to play catch up for a little while. It compensates quite nice. Yes, I noticed that as well. That's going to be interesting, isn't it? It compensates quite nicely for the fact that you don't have a reactor, and it means that you can... There's this kind of time where Zealot Stalker pressure can be very dangerous, as you mentioned, but the double barracks without the reactor means that you get Marines out slightly earlier, but you can then get the momentum later on once you get the gas. Now, what you scouted right there, and what we spotted, of course, was a Stargate over to the side, and this is going to be reasonably difficult to scout if a Stalker comes out. And State actually does have a Stalker, so it seems very unlikely that this SCV is going to get in here. It's going to see the Nexus, and that's really going to be about it. And he's not really going to know about this, unless, of course, he just lets him through. And this actually could... He's got to kill us pretty quickly. QXC... No, he's gone the wrong way. He'll be fine. He's going to see the double gas, which it doesn't really tell him all that much, because Protoss at this stage generally have 2 gas anyway.
No, you're exactly right, Totalbiscuit. It's precisely for this very reason. You want to have the availability of, well, you know, am I going to go for a quick tech, or am I just going to be, you know, pooling gas and trying to go for something else? In this scenario, Stay opening up Stargate before the expand. Now, I do want to emphasize that this kind of opening sort of needs to do damage, otherwise you're going to be very vulnerable to a counter push in the mid game, especially since QXC went command center first.
Yeah, he lands the scan, and actually misses the Stargate by a fraction. That's unbelievable. Oh, no, it did see it. It did see it, even though the indicators claimed that it wouldn't. Now, he went blind engineering bay before this, so as soon as his missile turret finishes, this Oracle's basically useless, and it's, as you said, it's going to do damage, but it's already being countered here. QXC moves in quite nicely, and he is doing a reasonable amount of damage to that Oracle, driving it away, and there was a second Oracle behind this that didn't get cancelled either. So now with missile turrets in the mineral line, these Oracles are basically being flat out counted.
Yeah, there's nothing really that you can do to the mineral line, at least. Now, if QXC is careless, he can get a couple Marines picked off. You want 4 Marines in the pack. That's their strongest. If they get a little bit Careless with his oracles, taking damage on both. Has to be very careful not to lose it.
Doesn't do anything because the missile turret's there. I mean, this is pretty much a hard countered opening right now. There's no way that you can say that State's like ahead at this stage, simply because he just hasn't done any damage.
No, he's not done any damage. This is 300 if you count the Stargate. 450 gas. That's enough for a Robo and a Robotics Bay, so you can start a Colossus, which he's been doing in other games. So this is a different scenario. Now QXC's production stim is about halfway finished. I feel like if he just does a standard 2 medevac poke, force the Photon Overcharge in one base and then drop in the main, I don't really know if State can hold it if he's not in perfect position.
No, the Oracle opening is very risky right now. It's something that Blizzard is even considering changing, in the fact that they're giving Oracles extra speed so that they can handle it just a little bit better, because Oracle is like a coin flip. Either your opponent has gone blind missile turrets or they haven't. And if they've gone blind missile turrets, you're screwed. If they haven't, you can do a ton of damage. There's really no middle ground to be had there.
Yeah, I do like this from State, trying to hallucinate an Oracles,
yeah,
but of course, if you're keeping it within turret range, he's going to see that's hallucinated, so you ain't fooling anybody, State.
Yeah, wasn't able to really draw his opponent out of position either, and even if he was, what are you going to do with it? What you can do in this situation is, if you're up against a Marine-heavy player, you can actually use Oracles to pick off reinforcements and pick off smaller packs of Marines. 2 Oracles will kill a pack of Marines pretty quickly, but it still means that the tech is basically worthless. You know, there's a lot of things that can kill Marines that don't involve that kind of gas expenditure.
Yeah, and now that QXC is moving out, State has to be really cautious. He does have enough energy for something like a Revelation, which he immediately drops.
Nice, I like that.
But he's gonna. It takes so much time for him to get this Templar Archives tech out and established, just because. Just look, he's on 3 gateways, and his charge is just starting. QXC is poking out. This is the perfect time for him to strike, despite him not having medevacs. I like this from QXC.
Yeah, this is really, really good. You don't necessarily need medevacs in this situation because you're not up against a huge amount of area of effect. The actual damage output of these gateway units is probably not enough to handle this. Charge is not going to be done before this hits either. This is a really nice timing here by QXC, I feel. And there's no way in a million years we're actually going to see any Templar come out here with Storm. There's the stim. Great force fields, actually, by State. That was absolutely perfect. And now trying to snipe from the upper ground here with that, and it's just not working. The Oracle does some damage, but now the medevacs boost in. They immediately pick up and go for the drop here. There is enough energy to do 1 photon overcharge, so maybe he pushes this back, but he is taking a lot of damage. The Zealots can't even get into range. I think maybe it would have made sense if State actually just held the Zealots back for a little while. Mothership Core goes down. This is disastrous for State.
Nothing's finished. Charge is almost finishing. Storm is almost finishing, but State can't afford either of those units right now just because QXC is immediately pressuring, and he didn't even get the opportunity to drop a Photon Overcharge whatsoever. QXC is doing so much damage with the small pack of bio.
This is a massacre. State is losing to 2 medevacs worth of units. Charge kicks in, but it's not enough, and State, of course, doesn't have Storm yet either. Feedbacks the medevacs, pretty much the best thing he could do, then turns it into an Archon, but the problem is there are more medevacs coming in. QXC is doing a huge amount of damage to the army of his opponent, and he's bringing in reinforcements. I mean, he's done this with 2 medevacs worth, and there's the GG immediately. The State just got obliterated by QXC.
Yeah, QXC even dropping the Manor Mule. It's really actually kind of funny or amusing, depending on how you look at it, that State dropped feedbacks, but there's only 1 or 2 energy per medevac, so no damage really dealt there.
Oh yeah, they were doing work, man. It's like, oh, right, great, you feedbacked us. We've already used all our healing energy. Who cares?
Yeah. I do want to emphasize that QXC's poke also was preemptive to try to see if he can force the Photon Overcharge, and State reacted really well with good force fields, just like you said, but no real power behind his defensive forces.
Exactly. It came in at a time when he didn't have any of the things you need to hold up against Marine Marauder Medevac, right? You had no charge, no Storm, no Archons ready, no other AoE. Force fields aren't enough. The Oracles, as you saw, just got destroyed immediately. They'd already taken heavy damage as it was, so they weren't going to be surviving that long. And it was one-sided. And it really came down to the fact that State took a risk on Oracles, and it didn't pay off.
Yeah, and I think most Terrans nowadays know to get some kind of early engineering bay. Even if you go for a quick reactor, going for an engineering bay and getting a +1 real quick, giving you the option to defend against air. Very good job by QXC. Great build.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. We're going to take a short break before we go into the next game, ladies and gentlemen. QXC currently leads 1-0. This could be a very short series if the next game goes like that. We'll be right back after this. Do not go anywhere. You are watching SHOUTcraft America. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to SHOUTcraft America. Don't want to keep you waiting for the rest of this particular group. That would be bad indeed. Whirlwind is the choice this time around. Bit of a bigger map. All spawns available here.
That's right. Do want to remind people that if you're just coming in, because we realize the show has started, that QXE won game number 1 on Neo Planet S, and now game number 2 is Whirlwind. Now, Totalbiscuit, did State choose this, or was the map predetermined?
State chose this, so the first map was picked, and then it's loser picks from there on in. But he only had limited choice because it's a 5-map pool with 2 vetoes. So in that situation, he does have a little bit of an edge here by saying, yeah, okay, I wanted to be on this map, which is fine. You know, this should be pretty decent for him. If he wants to play a defensive style, Whirlwind's a great place to do it. That push is going to come a lot later from QXE, if it does come indeed. He's going to be better prepared for it. But I just don't want to see oracles here. I just want to see something a little bit more solid from State going into this.
Yeah, I think opening Robo or Twilight Council is much better in this regard, especially because, just like you said, Whirlwind is a map where, as a Protoss, you're constantly defending, and that's what kind of drove Protoss players nuts originally. Then they watch players like Rain and SOS play, and they're like, well, if I just play like them, I should be okay. If only it was that easy.
Yeah, nice and easy there, no problem at all. Yeah, just play like these guys, it's wonderful. Yeah, that's nice and easy. Just going to copy their build order and everything will be absolutely fine, right? Yeah, okay. Yeah, whatever you say. We're going into this one, and this could be a long one because we are in a long by ground cross position here to the southeast position of Game Heart's Whirlwind. We have in the Red Trunks currently down 1 game in this best of 3 series. The underdog, I feel, in this matchup, it is
State.
You couldn't find a more American name for a player than State.
Yeah, unless it was a Patriot or something.
Yeah.
Charlie Sheen, maybe.
Super Patriot Boy. That would be fantastic. Versus his opponent. This guy, potentially more patriotic. We'll find out. Nothing more patriotic than destroying your opponent in grand fashion. In the Blue Trunks, playing Terran to the northwest position, it is
Complexity QXC.
You know, QXC used to wear a bandana that was red, white, and blue.
He did.
It was a banner. This guy is as American as it gets. The only person I feel like more American than QXC is quite possibly Mr. Bitter.
Mr. Bitter is damn American.
Yeah, he is. He's he is very American. He declares what has freedom and what doesn't.
He is, one might say, a real American.
It's true. He also has a really big American truck that gets 11 miles per gallon.
Hey, why would he need a truck? I've got to ask.
It's the Bitter truck. Wherever he goes, he has to be a little bit higher elevated than other people.
Well, I mean, how could you look down your nose at everyone else if you weren't elevated like that?
How can you show how much freedom you have if you're lower than other people?
That's pretty true, man. Yeah, it's hard to argue with that. QXE going for the same build here. Very confident. Whirlwind's an even better map to do it on the Neo Planet S, as far as I'm concerned. CC on the low ground here, followed up by the barracks. Now, the question is, there's no second barracks yet. Will he build that second barracks, or will he go for the slightly earlier gas to go for the earlier tech here? I almost feel like he will, just on the basis that... Never mind. There's the second barracks coming down. Well, we know QXE isn't going to be attacking for a while, that's for sure.
Yeah, probably not going to poke until the 8-9 minute mark where he feels more comfortable. Meanwhile, State is going to go for double gas yet again, keeping only a couple probes in each geyser.
Yep.
I'm kind of surprised he didn't go for something like Nexus first, even though it is a little bit riskier to do if you feel like your opponent's spawning on close ground. But even so, I feel like Whirlwind's one of those maps where you can really go Nexus first and feel safe, because Reapers, they have a hard time getting in.
They very much do.
Man.
Yeah, like, this is the only real area they can do that. Everything else is completely cut off. It's one of those maps where you just don't get a great surface area to use the Reaper. It's much easier to stop it from getting in the first place, and that's why we generally don't see that actually used. QXC with the identical build. Mothership Core coming out a bit earlier here for State. I don't know if this is really going to help him in any way. The size of the map really precludes doing anything with the Mothership Core. It's far too risky. By the time the core actually gets to your opponent, there's too many Marines on the map, and what can actually happen is the core can get caught out and killed.
Yeah, I mean, it could be for defensive measures as well. Having a Mothership Core still can make you very safe against early drops if QXC was doing that. And State, he poked his zealot all the way to the middle of the map for the watchtower and then backed off, because if QXC was to do something like a proxy barracks, putting in the middle of the map is the most ideal spot.
I would tend to agree with that. And QXC, just scouting just to see where his opponent is. He'll find him eventually, and of course, run into a Stalker and a Zealot, so the SCV is most likely going to die here. But that doesn't really make too much of a difference. Gas is now finally down for QXC. He threw that down at about 30 supply, which is pretty much about as late as you can get if you're just looking for that big focus on SCVs, big focus on minerals. We currently have a third barracks going down here. QXC moving backwards, because he doesn't know what's coming. He can't get a scout. He knows there's a Mothership Core, a Sentry, and a Stalker, but that's really it. Unless he lands a scan, it will be a situation where he has to blind counter again. That's why he's building the engineering bay. That's why he's building the Marines. In this case, State is not going to be doing anything of the sort, and we may see him fall back just in that more standard, safer... There it is. There's the Robo, actually, just as the scan lands. Almost like QXC knew that that would be the timing, and maybe he did. 3-gate Robo right now, so I would not expect aggression from State at all. At least not until a little bit later on.
Yeah, this is a state that I was looking forward to in game number 1. The 3-gate Robo, play reactive based off your opponent, get a couple of observers out, see what your opponent's doing, either force your opponent with Robo Tech or with Colossus Tech, and then switch to Templars or vice versa.
Yeah.
This is what I was expecting more. QXC, meanwhile, he was playing a little bit safer just because, believe it or not, 4-gate is still around in this matchup. You can just straight up bust your opponent if he's not careful. And I like the defensive prowess of QXC right now, just making sure he's covered both in his main and his natural. And if he was going to sense anything else was coming, build a second or third bunker, and hopefully you'll be preventable against any bust.
Yeah, and on a map like this, as long as you at least have some map control where you can see what's coming, you have the time to do that. It takes a while for a Protoss player to reach the other side of the map, and they're mostly going to delay it as a direct result of really desperately wanting to put down that pylon, making sure it's secure, and so on and so forth. QXC is building the missile turret. Where is it, actually, more to the point? Yeah, it's actually... So this is more of an anti-DT missile turret than it is an anti-air missile turret. Putting it right next to the bunker to make sure DTs can't run by into the natural.
Yeah, that's definitely smart. Dying to DTs, Totalbiscuit, as a Terran player, you definitely sympathize with me. It's just one of the most frustrating things ever.
It really, really is as well, because you know, it's like, oh, I've got scans, I'm fine, and then one DT slips your net, and then it's like, god damn it, you're just watching all your stuff die, waiting for the next scan to come in, and even knowing that scanning has lost you minerals, and it's actually infuriating. It makes me just want to punch people. It's all I'm saying is that Blizzard are responsible, I think, for a lot of violence as a result of Dark Templar.
Oh, don't start that argument again. I know CNN is going to pick that up right now and start writing a bunch of articles on it.
It's going to be horrible, isn't it? QXC going for a bit of a poke here. It's going to be timed with +1, as well as Combat Shield and Stim Pack. He's definitely not going to have Medivacs this time. His factory is way, way later. But I think that just got spotted there by the Phoenix. There's really not a lot here for State, but he should be able to force field this off. The thing is that I have to imagine this is designed specifically to make him do that. And if State misses the force fields, of course, it'll be an absolute disaster. Scan goes down, he's like, oh, look, there's barely anything here. Force fields go down. Color Marines actually get up the high ground, which is definitely not what you want to do, and they are eventually picked off there, but... using just... Oh, wow, he actually forced a photon overcharge as well. This is brilliant for QXC. He can actually just wait for Medivacs now. He doesn't even need to go up there.
Yeah, precisely correct, Totalbiscuit, especially since QXC's production is not in full force. 2 barracks are finishing up. His starport isn't even completed, and it's 10 minutes into the game. Yep. Normally the first Medivacs are out. QXC doing a good job just trying to bait, and you can tell only stimming a couple of his Marines to force a reaction, and State has to warp in immediately when he would prefer to use his other tech. In this scenario, he would want to get a Colossus out by now, but he went double forge, and he was forced to make all these Zealots and Stalkers.
Yeah, and that means that even if he does get the Colossus out, it's not going to have extended thermal lance, so it's much, much more vulnerable. In this defensive position, that range 9 Colossus would be absolutely fantastic, but he's not going to be able to get that for another couple of minutes. And we will see Medivacs out before that. It'll be interesting to see whether or not QXC decides to try and drop the main. If I were QXC right now, I'd be considering that. Just trying to snipe off what you can, do a little bit of damage. Rather than just going full force up the ramp against a player that has quite a bit of sentry energy, will have a time warp, and will also potentially have a photon overcharge.
Oh, QXC has got State read like a book. You can see the scan was perfect. You saw the Colossus tech, you saw the double forge. He has a second starport already, so he can start producing Medivacs as well as Vikings, because State still has the option to just push with 2-3 Colossus and completely overrun the Terran army if QXC is not careful. But in this scenario, he's covering all of his bases, Totalbiscuit. Well,
speaking of covering your bases, State is taking a third one right here. Now... it looks like QXC is going to take his third as well. It seems to me like taking the third right now with QXC with drop capability might be a little bit risky. What do you reckon?
It's risky in most scenarios. Just that State has so much observer coverage. I think he feels really confident he's able to read any medevac movement. I mean, he doesn't have the watchtower, but if he did that, I think he would be completely justified in taking it. Just because you need to shut down those medevacs, and if they do, I mean, 20 supply worth of army not in the Terran composition is really easy for Protoss to deal with. State has 2 Colossus, a third is about to pop out. I think State can hold this off. It's about whether he takes a good position or not.
Yeah, QXE is going to attack when Extended Thermal Lance is finished, which, oh, ouch. State picks off a medevac quite nicely there, but then runs right into that, but there's a quick blink, loses a Stalker for it, but, you know, I take that trade in either way. QXE actually pulled some SCVs here as well. We're seeing a lot more Terrans doing this. This is not all in, but it is definitely taking a significant risk. But it does give you that buffer, especially against stuff like Charging Zealots. Charge is not done yet. QXE is going to try and take this 3rd base down, and we're going to have to see how well State can defend against it. With that kind of firepower, it might just fall. I think it's just going to fall immediately.
Yeah, there's nothing really State can do when he's holed up in his natural.
Yeah.
QXE getting a little bit careless with his Viking count.
Yeah,
2 of them immediately
there.
drops off Miss Rally.
That's actually really
huge.
Yeah, I mean, if State could actually force an engagement right now, he would definitely win it, I feel. He's got the Colossus charge is about to finish, but I think State is too scared. He doesn't want to go out, and that's really unfortunate, because with only 2 Vikings on the field, this force would have done a lot. QXE's already backing off now. It's too late to push out.
Yeah, I do want to come into question about whether or not State felt nervous about that situation based off of QXE saying, you know what, State, I know you're a joker.
I know how you play. Yeah.
Yeah, and State had a pretty decisive army advantage a little bit, so you're 100% correct. If he would take that fight and maybe even throw down a chrono boost on his forges, maybe he could have squeezed out 2-2 and have a decisive advantage. Who knows? It's a little bit too hard to say now that the moment has passed. State's going to respond by double expanding. This is a very, very audacious move. State really has to bluff his position sort of in order to buy enough time, but QXE, he's still roaming the map. Very good job controlling.
Yeah, he is. He's got the Zelnaga watchtower, and yeah, he doesn't have observers, obviously, but he's already picked 1 off, so there's only 3 left. His Viking count's getting really, really high as well. The transition to Templar's coming in, and this might be the one thing that catches QXE out. If he continues to dedicate towards countering Colossus tech and not Templar tech, when his opponent is definitely nowhere near maxed out, so he has plenty of supply room to actually go for the Storm and the Templar as well as the Archons, then he might be in trouble.
Yeah, the Storm is about to finish, but it's still about 10 seconds out. QXE still had that window to poke in there a little bit, at least use the Vikings to chip down the Colossus, but simultaneously he's also pulling a lot of SCVs, and this is the moment where Storm really is going to be helpful considering that 2-2 has finished for our Protoss player.
Yes, it has. QXE maybe has underestimated his opponent here. Those Storms are absolutely massive there by State. Huge amounts of damage being inflicted here. Most of the Vikings were at the front and got caught in the Storms as well. State is going for it right now, and QXE suddenly finds himself caught out, but QXE immediately GG's, and State takes that in one decisive engagement.
Yes, exactly what you were talking about, Totalbiscuit. The Storm timing was working great for State. He picked a great spot to engage as well. There's nothing that QXE could even do about both the Storms and the Colossus. His Viking count was so low. Just because he lost a couple here and there. He lost 1 off the initial poke. He lost a couple off of Miss Rally. And those things tally over time. And a lot of Protoss players, they might initially think, wow, you know, Vikings are just so cost efficient. But they're also very costly for the Terran. QC couldn't replace that easily.
You know what I'm noticing about Terran? We're noticing an awful lot more Terran go for that